At the heart of healing is nervous system regulation, and that's what I'm talking about today with my guest. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer and the host of Wellness by Design. And my guest today is Leah Guy. Leah had a traumatic background as a child and a young adult, which led to anxiety and eating disorders, and pain. And after trying the conventional route with therapy and some pharmaceuticals, she decided to seek alternative solutions and regulate her nervous system. So, 30 years later, she's learned a thing or two. And as a practitioner to help others, she's also written a book. And so, we're going to be talking about that today on the show. So, also in this show, we're going to be learning some tools. Leah shares some great tools for nervous system regulation. I think you're really going to enjoy. All right, I'll see you inside the episode. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to have a girl named Guy here. She is has an amazing story, and so I'm really, really happy to welcome Leah Guy. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, when I heard about you, I thought this is exactly what I talk about all the time. You've written a book called Overcoming Toxic Emotions, and from everything that I've learned, pretty much most dis-ease in our body, including chronic pain, stems from emotions. Like for me, that was the case. I've seen it over and over again. Have you seen that in your experience as well? And that's one question. And then I'd also just like to hear, maybe we'll start with this. What led you to this work that you're into now? Because I know you've had a incredible background where you probably had a lot of toxic emotions and realized that you couldn't live that way. So
Mhm.
let's hear about your background, Leah. What led you to this work?
Sure. So primarily I was led to this work from my own traumas, and I had a lot of different scenarios when I was a younger child. My aunt was murdered, and it was the same year that my parents divorced. And then there was the emotional aspects, of the parents, which I have wonderful parents, but we all have parents that are human beings that have their own wounds and so forth. And then I developed or kind of absorbed this anxiety disorder. And then when I was in my young 20s, about 22 years old, I went through a rape situation. And so at that point, I had tried therapy and I had been on the antidepressants and all the things that you do.
Yeah.
And it's at a certain point, a friend of mine told me about this school in California, which is no longer there. Everyone asked me, how do I go to that school? It's no longer there, unfortunately, but it was a school about energy healing, mindfulness. We did intuitive channeling work and really learning about the mind-body connection. And then from there, I went to another program for massage therapy, actually, but also I was specializing in chronic pain and sports injury and reflexology and energy work and so forth there as well. So I began learning and experiencing those kinds of tools for myself, which were very, very helpful. It kind of, well, I guess at first just got me back into my body.
Yeah.
And it was very helpful. And I became passionate about it. I was already passionate about health and wellness and spirituality. So it was a perfect fit for me. And then I immediately just started seeing clients. And that was in 1996. And since then, I've been working with clients in some capacity or another, physical, emotional, spiritual, energetic, for almost 30 years now.
Wow, that's a long time. And a lot of experience. And you mentioned there about your emotions, and obviously you would have a lot of emotions, and realize that this other path, the tradition with the conventional path, wasn't really working. What did you find? I know you learned a lot of different modalities there. What did you find really tipped the scale for you and brought you back into living again, living without the toxic emotions?
Well, so I guess one thing I want to be clear about, I think there's certainly value and a place for traditional or, conventional
Of course,
support
yeah.
and therapy. Yeah. Um, that's a hard question. I would say overall, It was the somatic experience, and I
Yeah.
mean body experience, right? So when I was about 23 or 24, I began my yoga practice. And so it was a combination of all the various things, but it had to have somewhere to land. And once I started to really embody myself again, then I was able to utilize the influence and the tools from practitioners and healers and therapists and so forth. Whereas before I couldn't. And that's
Mhm.
really important to me because, a lot of people don't even think they have trauma. And we have to understand the definition of trauma. That's any experience that is too overwhelming to process in that
Yeah.
moment, right? And that changes our brain and how we function. And that's how it starts storing in our body. So,
Mhm.
so if we understand that, then we understand most people have trauma. And the fact that when we experience trauma, if we don't have a way or a place or a person to process that with and process it through, then we're going to have a separation feeling inside of us. We're going to split. We're going to dissociate. We're
Mhm.
going to try to push off things. And the second that we start doing that, we become less whole. And so, my work that I do now spiritually, like soul retrievals and that kind of thing, and the somatic piece of really getting embodied, that to me has to be the foundation for anyone who's really trying to heal.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, we're so disassociated from our bodies, and people probably don't even realize it. I didn't know it. I lived my whole life really without being in my body, and I didn't realize that that is the key, right? Because we're getting messages through our body all the time. Our body is speaking to us, but if we're if we're up here in our heads, we're not getting those messages, not listening, and as you said, the emotions then can get trapped. Um, so what are some of when you talk about embodiment, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's kind of a coming home. It's a learning how to be present and holding sensation in the physical self in real time right now.
Hmm.
And that can be as simple as stopping, sitting down, quieting the noise, and just observing. It can be that simple. It can include yoga or Tai Chi. It can include other practitioners helping us. But for most people, going outside and putting your feet in the ground and breathing and being willing to stay present, stay focused on self and have healthy boundaries, that's as much as we need, to start.
Yeah, it's so simple, right?
It is, but it's very hard because we're living from our subconscious mind and we're living in a programming that just is looping the narrative of our past. And a lot of people don't know how to stay really present. They're scared of it.
Yeah, and there's so much distraction, right? We're totally distracted with all those distractions, shopping or gossiping or watching TV or even reading books, which seems very, can seem noble, but even that's a distraction, just getting away from what's going on here and just not being present. But it's just so simple to do it, but hard to do. Simple, but not easy
Yeah.
necessarily.
But Jane, I would say, if you're shopping, then just shop. What happens is we go shopping, and while we're shopping, we're thinking about our sister or the list over here, or what could happen 4 days from now, or what happened last week. If you're going to go shopping, just shop. There's nothing wrong with shopping. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with reading. There's nothing wrong with any what we call distractions. The distractions only come in our mind when it starts sending us other places in the midst of whatever we're doing.
I love that distinction, Leah, that it's what are we thinking about? Are we in the moment or are we ruminating over the past or worrying about the future?
Right.
So it's the moment and in the body. So I talk a lot about how our body speaks to us. Well, chronic pain, which is a lot of the audience of this podcast. Chronic pain is a way the body speaks to us. Would you what kind of wording and language do you use around that?
Well, I mean, chronic pain is, it's a word and phrase that we all understand. I think that on the one hand, we have to be cautious to not get into a self-blaming mode when we take on the responsibility of our
Yeah.
condition. We have to learn how to relate to our bodies and the symptoms that are arising that really just have information for us. What is the information here? For the past 4 years, I've been dealing with a virus, which I thought was shingles, and no one likes this word, but it was herpes actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it would flare out on my body, not just like in my vagina or private parts or my mouth, but on my body, like every 60 days. And everyone was saying, go get the shot, do this, just make it go away kind of thing. And it's not that I wanted it there, but what I knew is that it wasn't just the blisters, it wasn't just a virus. There was some rooting going on within me, some really deep rooting out of history and memory and pain and shame and all kinds of stuff. And so I wanted it to express so that I could relate to it and understand, where am I in my psyche and my subconscious? Where am I in my present life? What is triggering me? What is upsetting me? Because I didn't feel like I had that much stress. So that's just an example of, what can happen. And there is underlying information. Of course, yes, I got that virus from someone else, so I could blame them.
Right.
And I don't love that I have it. We can blame our genetics, we can blame the environment, all kinds of things. And yes, it's true, that's where it comes from. However, once it is with us, we need to develop a relationship with that thing, that discord, that dis-ease, so that we can actually heal through it and with it and not be against it.
Right. So see it as, I love the word that you use there, Leah, the information, because it is information. See it as information rather than an enemy, something
Yeah.
to hate. Uh,
Yes.
do you, when you do some of this body type of or embodiment work, do you sometimes, I'm just curious, personify this illness or personify, say, the pain or personify what might be going in your gut, that kind of thing? Do you use that as a tool?
Sometimes, but I think I may think of it a little differently than the way you're describing right now.
Okay.
I think of it more kind of as, shadow parts of myself, I guess I would say.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think of it as something separate than me. So I personify it in the sense of owning it, claiming it,
Mhm.
and holding it, and not letting it be outside of me. A lot of people, for example, with anxiety, we use this terminology like I have anxiety, or I'm just an anxious person. And it becomes this relationship where it's this other thing in us, and we own, or it's taken over us. And I think even in our language, it's really important to get clear and honest about what is going on now versus what we've experienced 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago. And that it doesn't have ownership over us, that it is actually a part of us, and
Mm.
whether that's a shadow part, or you name it, or, whatever you want to do, that we keep it with us.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I also like what you said there about language. Our language is so important, right? Because well, you talked about the subconscious mind. Our language, that's the programming that's going into the subconscious mind. So the distinctions in the language we use are really key. And not, taking on, I really like to talk about a lot with, when people say my pain or my illness, it's just like, yeah, I like that ownership part, but not seeing it as something you like, you got to keep. It's a part of me. So I like that little distinction that you made there about it's a part of me. Have you ever done any work with IFS, internal family systems?
Yeah, not extensive with a therapist itself, but yes, I'm very familiar, and I've done quite a bit of work there. Yes.
Yeah, I like that therapy, the way that it acknowledges that these are all just parts of me, parts of my family.
Right.
You mentioned that the school that you went to was I had also talked about channeling, I think. So how much does that play a part in the work that you do?
I would say at this point, a tremendous amount.
Mhm.
Most every session that I do with a person is intuitive and guided. Um, and some people schedule that with me. I have an offering of that, just an intuitive reading session. But even in my spiritual work, and certainly in the soul retrieval work, and when we do any kind of timeline work, I access their records, their timeline, their field, and it's all just supremely guided that way. People say, how do you do what you do? And the truth is, I don't know, because I don't do it. There's just a part that's I'm channeling. I'm just being the facilitator. So it's part of everything that I do.
Hmm. And would you say that pretty much everyone can channel, and we probably are channeling and not really calling it that?
Yeah, I think everyone can. I think a lot of people don't, and they don't know how. And it's not because there's something wrong with them. It's just the available space to listen and the self work it takes to kind of get comfortable enough and settled enough to hear and to trust. And it's a very deep relationship that happens that way with spirit, at least for me. And it's the most sacred thing that I've ever experienced, for sure. So I think that everyone can, yes. And there's a lot of work to do. And sometimes in the way of that, it depends
Yeah.
on the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, because as you said, you have to get quiet, you develop that relationship, and that takes time. And that's something that we tend to in our society anyway. We don't value that quiet, introspective time.
Yeah.
We're just busy, 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 right?
Mm. Yeah.
So, uh, is there, we talked about somatics. I'd like to come back to that and releasing the toxic emotions. That are causing the dis-ease. So, is there a little practice we could do that you could share with the audience to help them do that, help them become more embodied and in touch with their body?
Sure. One thing I do every morning now, I've always had a morning routine, but I've incorporated a little bit of what would be traditional Qigong, but it looks and it is very simple. And it's really just kind of cupping and tapping
Yeah.
around your head and to your shoulders, and then down the sideline under each arm to your waist, and then down your outside your legs, over your toes, and then the inside of your legs, and then kind of tapping on your hip flexors and then tapping on your mid back. So it's this whole body awakening, and it's very invigorating, but it's also, you'll notice if you do it just 3 times, how present you are. It's like your body's going, oh, I'm here. There's also the thymus tap that people can do, which is just at their high heart here, and just tap hard enough where you feel it. You might even feel a little vibration in your voice if you're tapping while you're talking.
Mhm.
And this can also kind of awaken our spiritual heart, and it can give us a little energy and help start to regulate some of the endocrine system. And so that's another one. And then this very simple, right between your collarbone here, this V, you can take your finger here and just kind of pull down on it and close your eyes. It's very settling, this move. Or you can do this with your ears, pulling down on your earlobes. And just close your eyes and breathe. And all of a sudden, you may even feel like you're a little heavier in your body, or that you notice your weight sitting on the couch or chair, or your feet on the floor. It just kind of really pulls you in. So those are some, and if you, like I said, you can do it in your ears too. Just kind of put your fingers in your ear, inside your ear, and right there in that loop-de-loo, if you just pull down a little bit. Similar thing, this can help also activate the vagus nerve, which can
I was just
calm.
going to say that it's a good
Yeah.
vagus nerve exercise.
Yeah, exactly. So these things can, help us to regulate and also get into our body. Of course, just tapping, if anyone knows EFT, or just like slapping up the arms sometimes, if you're feeling anxious or out of your body, I slap sometimes, or I just stand up and raise my arms and kind of swoosh down with a big breath. anything that kind of alerts or signals the whole body to expand and release. Because typically in those moments when we're feeling dissociated or anxious or out of our body, there's blocked energy channels going on. And if we can just simply kind of awaken those, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm all here again. Yeah. And sometimes we have to do this multiple times a day, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And like just simply breathing too can really just
Yes.
connect you with the body again and calm you down. I hear a lot of times, and maybe you hear this too, Leah, people say, well, I'm not stressed.
Mhm.
And obviously, there is some part of them that's stressed, but they're not aware. How? Like, how would you, when people say that they're not stressed,
Mhm.
but you suspect that they are, how do you help them see that, yeah, there is stuff going on?
Yeah. Well, I think for some people, and I would probably include myself in this group, is that we've become so used to being in survival mode that we're kind of numb to certain stressors that other people feel at the surface, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say, we can say, okay, if you're not stressed, but let's still every day, morning or night, or sometime during the day, let's find a little practice to just alleviate or rebalance some part of us as a preventative, if nothing else. Let's do this as a way to regulate and moderate and not think of trying to fix something, because a person who's in survival mode, we have to remember they've been trying to fix something or another for 30, 40, 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
And so that language doesn't even really land for them. It's like, maybe let's support, let's regulate, let's moderate, let's just open, let's give more space, or however we want to think of it, so that our body still gets the benefit without us feeling like it's just another thing we have to do,
Mm,
have to
yeah.
somehow not be stressed or have to somehow not be like this.
I really like that, Leah, because there's people that are in that like locked in nervous system
Mhm.
freeze or dysregulation. Um, they're so disconnected that
Mhm.
they just don't even realize it. So if changing the language, I like that around support or just like a little break rather than saying, trying to convince them that there is a problem, just like, let's just have this little break, give yourself a little break. And then my own experience, because I was like that, and my own experience was that once you get little glimpses of that, what it feels like to be regulated, then you really notice when you switch back again, right?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
for me, it's a lot of clenching in my solar plexus area, so I was always tightening that up, but I didn't realize I was so tight there until I got a little bit loose. But now I notice getting tight there. Do you
Yes.
see that in the people that you work with as well?
Yeah, sometimes, everyone's different. It's interesting. That's the reason I wrote my first book. People always ask, why did I write The Fearless Path? And it was because I recognize that although our stories are extremely different, we tend to express and we have a shared language around our suffering and how we store, hold, regress, control our experiences. And so, yes, certainly I have. I would like to say, though, I think, like the word disconnected, we can feel disconnected, but some people who are so acclimated to being in survival mode, even there, like that language of, you know, it can be a challenging language because there's nothing wrong with them, and the second sometimes we include language that something's wrong with them, then they go into survival mode even more,
Right.
and so the validation piece and the supporting a person just right where they are, we don't need to label it or really anything. And so when I work with clients, I just listen, and I share sometimes, what I see of their patterns, but there's some clients that are eager, like, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? And, I'm consistently saying, we're not fixing anything, there's no fixing. In fact, that mentality is going to keep us from having any real shifts or change in our lives. So there's nothing to fix here because we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. We're just humans having experiences, and we're noticing the information that our bodies and our minds and our spirits are sharing with us, that maybe it's wanting to have a different experience now. Maybe it's wanting to explore and get curious about, what does it feel like to just, I don't know, let my arm go like this instead of clenching it to the side. And we'll see what that feels like. And if it doesn't feel good, then it's okay to keep clenching to the side. And so it's a very supportive process. And the more that we can give that for a person, it seems to me anyway, that the easier they'll go, okay, I don't need to do that anymore, because now I'm in accordance with it and I'm not in that state of conflict.
Mm. What the exercise you talked about there reminded me a little bit of Feldenkrais, right? That,
Mhm.
and it's more approaching with curiosity. How do I feel when I do this? How just noticing those differences. And I really love that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to fix. There's just what is, and how do I feel about it, my experience of it.
Yeah.
I really, really love that, Leah. Tell us about your book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions.
Yeah, so that was my last book, and well, first of all, it's available in 4 languages. So if you're listening from somewhere else, then it's maybe available. It's a book about identifying what emotions that we typically hold on to, captivate inside of our body and in our mind, and the purpose that they serve. And I also explain about emotional addiction and how our frequency gets attached to an emotional state, usually from our youth, usually from some kind of trauma, fear, loneliness, unsurety, unsafety, or what have you. And then how the rest of our lives play out from that frequency that's attached and addicted to that. And then I give some, tools to how to help to shift the vibration and frequency in a sustainable way, so that we can have a different experience, so we can manifest differently, so we can attract and experience our realities differently. And it's been a very helpful book for a lot of people, because I like to be very practical. There's not a lot of BS. You don't have to sift through a lot of spiritual jargon or anything like that, and just come to a real clear understanding for yourself of, okay, my childhood was obviously very varied, and someone else may not agree with me about this, but my authentic, true experience left me feeling like this the majority of the time. And that is what I've come to know as my imprints or my reality. And that reality and that feeling sensation has a frequency to it. And if I don't do something, meaning become conscious of that and work on myself to shift and elevate, then I'm going to be operating from that frequency state the rest of my life. And a lot of people are. And there's no shame in that, because we don't know. Right. But we do, once we do know, then we have an option um, to change it, to experience something different. So that's what the book is about.
I love that. I love the practical tools. And so you talked there about the frequency. Um, so when you talk about frequency, are you talking about the frequency of your sort of overriding emotions?
The frequency of what I call the imprinted state. Some people have an imprinted state of fear or loneliness or guilt or shame, insecurity, unlovability, unsafety, instability, all kinds of different variations. And it's not that simple, but those are the buckets, kind of, if you will. And so, up to a certain age, that's kind of set for us. And that feeling state, like everything, it has a frequency to it, a vibration to it. And so I know a lot of people these days, they're talking about raise your vibration, this and that, or whatever. And, just think good thoughts and go out in the sun. It's not that easy. I mean, we can have superficial, energetic changes throughout our day, which we do. But what holds most people up is this core wound frequency that's attached to their lived experience or felt experience from an early time or from a specific time that has impacted the whole of their life.
Hmm. Yeah, that was kind of where I got to as well. so I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, came on after a real stressful period. And so I was, working away at that, but I realized there was that underlying thing my whole life that had to be dealt with, which can seem like a big thing for people. But it sounds like you break it down into simple tools. And
Yeah.
also it's just like, let's just get in touch with our body. And am I right in assuming when we do that, we can shift those frequencies a little bit because we're not constantly in that frequency, our typical imprinting frequency.
Well, I mean, we certainly have a lot of emotional work to do typically, as well as getting into our bodies. Learning to trust ourselves is a big one. And so, I have a course on that. Learning to trust ourselves, building a different relationship with ourselves, detaching from the blame and from the actual what happened and who did what, getting out of the cognitive mind and into the feeling state. Learning in our body where we're holding that's where the somatic work comes in very handy so that we can gently, work with that energy to let it rise up and out. Learning how to healthily process emotions as they happen in real time. So there's a lot of different things, but it doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to take even years. But even that concept is like, well, what does it matter how long it takes, because once we get started, it's like, if I'm driving to California, the second I get on the highway, there's a part of me that's in California, right? But I'm not actually going to get there until I drive the 4,000 miles. The same is true for healing. Once we get on the road, we're already experiencing our healing, but we may not see the fullness of what that is for, several days, months, years down the road. And that's okay. Do we want to
Mhm.
get off? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, on the
But
road.
yeah, we have to be willing to just be on that. It's like having a lifestyle versus a diet, right?
Yes. Now, Leah, you mentioned that you do soul retrieval work, and so really at the soul level, how much does that play into our life experience? Like sometimes I think people will talk about, well, it's not just in my genes. I know there's been a lot of science recently that, emotions get passed down through genes as well, which is kind of interesting. So how much does that play into people's current experience?
Now, which one are you asking? Sorry, about the emotions that get passed down or the soul retrieval work?
Well, okay, let's look at the soul retrieval work.
Okay, yeah. Soul retrieval work is very subtle, but it's very powerful. Um, it's like, will it change a person's life? Well, in my estimation, everything changes our lives all the time, so yes, it can. It can bring an empowerment, it can bring wholeness, it can bring memory. There's a real remembering and healing.
Mhm.
It can bring a sense of our strength and personality and characteristics of us that we've kind of shelved. So it can be very powerful work, but it's very subtle. It's not the kind of thing, that's why I think people love like massage. You're tight, you go get a massage, you feel it, you walk out of there and you go, oh wow, I can move my neck differently. Soul retrieval is different in the sense that you might sense something, but it's not likely going to smack you in the face and go, oh, here, my 12-year-old is home. It's not like that. But it does help us also become more attuned to our fullness, to our energy, to our intuitive state, to our, just the breadth of who we are. So I think it can have a massive impact on people's lives for sure. I mean, I've seen it, with my clients and so forth. Yeah.
Mhm. And what about the passing on of emotions through generations?
Mhm.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it certainly happens. I think that they pass on and we absorb them as part of our identity and lived experience. I think the work there is not to, we have a lot of language in our culture and our society about like cutting cords and letting go and this kind of stuff. I detest that language. I think it's terrible for our psyches and for our healing and our wholeness. I think we can look at those emotions and again, kind of become curious about what is it teaching me?
Mhm.
How has this informed my family? How we have operated? How has it informed our beliefs? How does it inform the the who I think I am? And can I honor that and not attach to it so intimately that I have to play that out? And that's a real challenging state to hold. It's a very high spiritual calling. It's a very high frequency. Is to be able to honor something and stay present to it without attaching to it, without letting it become yours, without needing it to become yours. And again, now we circle back to, do I trust myself? Am I in my body? Am I confident? How much of me is attached to my family of origins identity so that I feel safe, or so that I feel loved, or so that I don't feel abandoned? This is where some of those fears and issues can arise. So it just, everything, every little piece of our healing work is connected to the next piece. It's connected to the next piece. So I think that passed down emotions are real and they affect us, but they don't have to dominate us, and they don't have to affect us even, once we learn how to manage ourselves and healthily separate from our imprinted story, and from, in a healthy way, create an autonomy for ourselves that is very focused on, here is who I am, and this is who you are. And I allow you to be that. And I allow me to be this. I accept you fully. I accept me fully. I see the impact of this and how it has touched me. And I'm going to allow that to be here without feeling that need or urge to somehow relate to it intimately, so that I know you somehow, People get afraid of, sometimes in the healing work with their family, with their parents or grandparents or sisters, or even other caretakers or neighbors or what have you, to do this kind of really deep psychological and energetic work around love and connection, because they're afraid that they're going to get disconnected, or that the love is going to change, or that someone's not going to be there for them, or what have you. That's not what we're doing at all. It's really fine tuning and clarifying what is ours, what is theirs, and how can we stay with us. So
Hmm.
it's beautiful work.
I like what you said there about approaching it with sort of a loving curiosity as
Mhm.
opposed to a blame or, how do I get rid of this? It's just a loving curiosity. So it's really beautiful. Okay, I always ask my guest, what's one thing, a baby step someone could take today that's going to begin to initiate healing in their body? So what would you suggest, Leah, as a baby step they could take right now?
Okay. A baby step. This is going to sound weird, but
Weird is good. I like weird.
okay. We do not use our hands in the way that really empowers us. And we can take our hands and literally full contact on our face, and just hold your own face like you would a baby's face. Go down and make full contact with your entire body, your neck, your chest, your breast, your shoulders. You can go slow, you can do it in swooping motions, but what I want is the whole palm of your hand and the entirety of your hand on every ounce and inch of body that you can connect with. And go down and go around your feet and under your heels, and go on your elbows and underneath your arms, every single inch of your body. Not only is it soothing, but it's like, it's so loving, like most of us need touch. We know that. But to make full contact, if you can do this with another person, that's beautiful too. But we can do it with ourselves. We can do it every day, just to make full contact. It will help us get into our body. It will help us be more intimate with ourselves, to know ourselves better, and to use the energy in a healing way with ourselves. But we have to do it with love.
I've done what 150 shows. It's the first time I've heard something like that. I really, really love that. It is very loving. Just even holding your face in your hands. It's such a loving thing to do.
So loving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we think about doing it for other people, but a lot of people, most people don't think about doing that for themselves. So
But even with people we love, we'll often just find one part of their body, we'll stroke their shoulder or their arm, and we'll just do that. But when we really allow ourselves to get connected that way, wow, it's a game changer.
yeah, yeah, even, it's just a way of like literally making love, like making a loving feeling, right? It's just really beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
You're
So,
welcome.
Leah, where can people find your book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions? And where,
Anywhere, oh yeah,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
Anywhere books are sold on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, you may have to order it through Barnes and Noble. On my website is leahguy.com, leahguy.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's the next thing I was going to ask you, your website. But are you on social media? Where can people follow you on social?
I am at Leah the Modern Sage.
The Modern Sage. I love that. So look out for Leah, everyone, and that book. I'm really excited about that book and seeing some of these practical tools. I love your practicality. It's so good, Leah. So thank you so much for being a guest on Wellness by Design today and for this great work that you've been doing for 30 years and really helping people have a different relationship with themselves and overcome their toxic emotions. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing the work you do as well.
Thanks for everyone being here, watching or listening. If you're listening to this, maybe you want to go check it out on YouTube so you can see the actions that Leah was showing us today, and hit subscribe and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. All right, everyone, have a great day. We'll see you again soon.